Navy balconies, that's the new Aqua Tower. It's about a year old. The architect is Jean Gang, and according to her, those balconies are inspired by the natural outcroppings of limestone that can be found along the banks of Lake Michigan throughout Illinois, meant to give a natural look to the building, as if the lake has been eroding the balconies off of it for the last several hundred years. Now, the building that turned the Aon Center into the third tallest is the new second tallest building in Chicago, and that might be a little tough to see because it's directly in front of us right now, along with the sun. While I'm pointing things out, the sun, a giant burning ball of gas in space, about 95 million miles from here. But just under the sun is the Trump Tower, Donald Trump's new investment in Chicago, the Trump International Hotel and Tower. We'll get a better sunless view of it as we get closer, but it rises up to about 1,389 feet. The height includes the spire that is sticking up off the very top of the tower. The spire at the top really takes it up to the full height. That's been making it second tallest since 2008. The architect is Adrian Smith, and he also designed the NBC Tower you're going to see on the right side next. I'll tell you about that in a second. That's the good stuff there. Like, there's a bridge about every 2 minutes, but only lasts for like 8 seconds. The NBC Tower to the right from 1989 by Adrian Smith. It looks a lot like the 30 Rockefeller Center in New York City for NBC, and it's a throwback to the Art Deco style, popular in the mid-1920s and early 30s. Vertical lines run up the sides, setbacks as you climb to the top of it, and the metal window plates are all the same elements that you're going to see on these older buildings later on out here. But coming up ahead of us, two.
Isn't that a nice word to say to all these people on this tour, sir?
What's going on out here? Two of Chicago's more famous landmark buildings. Right now, diagonally to the right, a good look at the Wrigley Building, home to the great chewing gum empire. It's two buildings connected by bridges in between it, and the clock tower at the top is modeled after the Giralda Tower in Seville, Spain. It was built in 1921, the design of Graham Anderson, Probst and White, a firm responsible for many of the early buildings in Chicago. And directly to the right, you'll see the Chicago Tribune Tower, 1922. That was the year the Tribune newspaper had a competition to see who could design the most beautiful office building in the world. That's first place by Raymond Hood and John Howells of New York. That design was inspired by the Butter Tower from the Rouen Cathedral in France. They won $50,000 for first prize. Here's a closer look at the Wrigley Building to your right side. It's a blend of Spanish and French Renaissance-style architecture and the very first office building ever built on the north side of the river when it was mainly industrial. And here's our more sunless look at the Trump Tower now. Again, it's the work of Adrian Smith, and it looks tall from here, but Adrian Smith also designed the tallest building in the world, the Burj Khalifa building in Dubai. What is going on over there? Heard all sorts of cheering and hollering going on. Maybe it's like a protest or something. I don't know. Yeah, if you stack two Trump towers on top of each other, that's how tall the tallest building in the world is right now, over 2,700 feet. The mirrored glass on the building reflecting the city is one of the ways it pays tribute to its surroundings here. It's condos on the top half, hotel on the bottom half, and a $9 jar of gummy bears in the mini fridge. So it's very fancy in there. Right after this bridge is the final American design of Ludwig Mies van der Rohe. He gets credit for being the father of the modern style, which this next building on the right embodies. It's the old IBM building from 1969. Now just 330 Wabash, and we'll see it again just after the bridge. For the first time in history, Ludwig Mies van der Rohe stripped off all the decorations and left the bare essence of a building, glass and steel. And that would be the predominant style in commercial architecture from the 1950s all the way to the 1980s. The modern style. But not everybody liked it, and you'll see a rebellion against that style next door. So here on the right side are Bertrand Goldberg's Marina City Towers. Lovingly nicknamed the Corncob Towers by many Chicagoans due to that design, Goldberg was a student of Ludwig Mies van der Rohe, but he grew to hate the square. He believed the circle had the power to draw people together, and this was meant to be a city within a city. Everything that you could ever want right in your own building complex was the big idea. It was finished in the mid-1960s, making it one of the earliest river residences out here. Today, the Chicago River is very much a recreational river. Now it's just mainly full of tour boats and water taxis, kayaks, canoes, rowing teams. Riverside restaurants, like you see over here on the right, are becoming increasingly popular. Maybe not this one. See anybody out there. But this was a major industrial waterway for about the first century of Chicago's history. You'll get a taste of that industrial past on the right side next. The Reed Murdoch Warehouse to the right, from 1914, by George C. Nimmons. And this is all you would have found out here back then. Warehouses, grain elevators, lumber yards, factories, and slaughterhouses made up the old river. This one has brickwork set up to look like shafts of wheat around the windows at the top, meant to take on some of the aspects of the American prairie in their design. There goes the L. Pretty new office building on the right side of us now here. That's 300 North LaSalle. It's about a year and a half old, and almost all windows on this one, floor to ceiling, cable suspended glass making up the outside wall, and a nice park area to take advantage of being on the river. It's next door to the Chase Sanborn Coffee Warehouse, which is now modern office with a totally glass penthouse across the top of it, with a little dirt on it. Yeah, that's my top drawer stuff right there. Yeah, it's not going to get funnier than that, I'm afraid. Architecture humor appeals to about 2% of the population. Some of you are here. There's one of the great giants of the past on the right. That's the Merchandise Mart. This was the biggest building in the world when it was built in the early 30s. It takes up 2 entire city blocks, and that's the authentic Art Deco style there. Vertical lines up the side, the setbacks at the top, the window plates again. And the big heads here in front of it are the merchant princes of Chicago. Guys like Marshall Field, Montgomery Ward, a few Sears presidents. This was built to be a gigantic warehouse for the Marshall Field Company, for their department stores and mail order business. But now it is the world's largest wholesale furniture showroom for the most part. This smaller building right next door, this was once a companion piece to the Merchandise Mart here to your right. It was the Apparel Mart. Started out as a warehouse for fine fabrics and clothing, and mostly windowless originally because direct sunlight is very bad for a fine fabric. Most of those windows were punched into it later, and you can see it's now home to the Holiday Inn and Chicago Sun-Times newspaper. The building stands on an important piece of land. This is Wolf Point. This is where all the branches of the river meet. So far, we have been on the main branch. On the left side, the South Branch would take you into the canal and all the way to the Mississippi River. And on the right, the North Branch leads to the source of the river up in the northern suburbs. The Wolf Point is also where Chicago became a town. They signed the charter to be a town right here in 1833. A population of roughly 200 fur traders. And they lived in a town made up of a military fort at the mouth of the river, Fort Dearborn, and 3 taverns built on the 3 banks of Wolf Point. That swampy paradise lasted until 1837.